And so we arrived here because the country wanted us to be here, and wanted us to be here in the name of power and individualism.
The people that are making the decisions do not know what it's like to not have access. Person that I'm feeding in my community, their reality is, I don't have access to healthy food. The money that you're wanting me to spend on healthy food, I have to pay rent, or I have to pay an Uber to get to some healthy food, because within a one mile walking radius of my home, there is no access. And then the people at their top, they have all the access in the world.
That's why I call it food apartheid. You know, I think it's deliberately done. We got a gas station here, and you got a gas station, 2 blocks down. Another dude, like, why we got all these gas stations for? Why we got all these liquor stores? Like, that wouldn't be allowed out in the suburbs. Like,
I will never understand why some policymakers, some business leaders, some community leaders even think that that is the way to go, to just put together a box of food and hope that people like something from it and appreciate it.
We have to have that sense of urgency around these communities that are struggling, whether it be through a food apartheid or environmental racism. We have to start showing up for these communities if we want long-term systemic change to happen.
It takes a catastrophe for people to wake up. Instead of doing the things that we know are right and just doing them because they're right, it takes an actual catastrophe or the bottom to fall out or our whole lives to blow up to really recognize, oh, we need to make these changes.
Who I hold to the fire are the elected officials who, in moments of crisis, often war, and now global pandemic, have demonstrated that if we want to, we can feed every child. If we want to. But if we don't want to feed them, we can also do that.
Hi, I'm Janett.
Hi, I'm Sada. This is the Food for All podcast with Food City. I'm Sada Banuta, and this is Janett Lewis.
Yes.
With
Rustic Roots Sanctuary.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm so glad I'm finally getting to meet you in person. I've read about you. I've heard about you. And I know Miss Cookie from your farm, and she loves you. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad we're getting to do this and get to know each other. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Are you originally from here?
No, I'm originally from Atlanta area, and then I moved out to San Diego and spent the majority of my adult life out there in holistic healthcare, and then I came to St. Louis.
Okay, when did you move to St. Louis?
2016. My parents were getting really old, and I wanted to be closer, so from California, it's like a 48-hour drive to Atlanta, and from here it's 10 hours. So I figured this would be closer. If I needed to get to them, I could. And they have since both passed since I've been here. So, but I love St. Louis, so I'm staying.
Yeah, and you've created a whole community. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. How?
Well, I don't know if I created the community or if the community just let me in and loved me.
Okay, they loved you. All right.
Yeah, I don't think I created it. I think it was there. It was just there was really not a lot going on in North County. So it's an unincorporated area in St. Louis County, but there's not a lot happening. So for years, it has been disinvested. And basically it's underrepresented. There are really not a lot of resources flowing to the area.
And when that happens, what does that area look like when there's not investment in it?
It just looks like no jobs and no real food. So I think in 2018, there was a Shop and Save that closed and left, and it was on the 367 and Parker. So once that store left, it left Spanish Lake with only one grocery store to feed 18,000 residents. So one grocery store, 18,000 residents in the area, and many of which have one or no cars. So it becomes like a real issue getting food. So as long as you have transportation, you can go, but most of the people that live in Spanish Lake will drive to Granite City or Florissant, where most of the nearest services are. I wouldn't say it's an extremely healthy area. It's a low to moderate income, majority Black neighborhood. So, you've got fast food restaurants, dollar stores, and no real nutritious green stuff. So that was the reason we started farming in our backyard, literally, because we wanted to make sure our community had access to fresh food and nutrition. Nothing is more irritating than seeing all these children get out of school and go straight to the gas station and get those like flaming, I don't know if it's Cheetos or some weird hot fries and ices, but they have no real nutrition. So we've been thinking about different solutions, like how we could have snack packs of like sweet peas when they first start growing, or just something nutritious that the kids can be exposed to. And one of the things that happens time and time again is the children will come out to the farm for field trips or farm tours, and they'll look at things and be like, wow, I don't want that, And then it's like, okay, well, I understand that you've had one before that might not have been as delicious as the ones we grow ourselves, but check this out. And so you can actually give them something that they thought tasted horrible because they've only had like the one that's come from across the country in a shipping container or whatever. But if you give them something that's fresh and it's grown right out of the ground, they tend to have a different take on it, and the lights will come on and they'll be like, wow, I've never tasted a tomato this delicious. And also, like, they're learning at the farm that the food is grown. It doesn't just come out of a can. Like, you would be amazed at how many children don't realize that you don't just go to the store and buy food, that it's actually grown from a living plant.
So exposure,
education, feeding them.
Experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can turn the lights on for someone. And so I think that that'll help a lot, just create better habits for them long term, because what we saw when COVID exploded was, Black and brown people were hit a lot harder than our white counterparts. And I believe it's, they say pre-existing conditions, but diabetes, heart disease, like so many of these diseases that are taking people out or becoming pre-existing conditions are brought on by a lack of nutrition or improper nutrition.
For the longest, we talked about food insecurity as that, and the pandemic showed us that it's not just food insecurity, it's nutrition insecurity, because we're starting to see the consequence of food insecurity, right? When you don't have a consistent access, right? Because you can eat fast food, processed food every once in a while, that's cool, right? But if it's every day,
right. I'm trying to think of, what was that show called where the guy went to McDonald's like every single day? Oh, it was Super Size Me. It was so terrible. He was like, my doctor's like, what are you doing? Stop, you're gonna kill yourself, because his cholesterol went through the roof. And I mean, people experiment with things like this, so we already know. And I mean, obviously, most people grew up on, my age, grew up on you are what you eat. So it just makes sense that, if you want to eat something that's more natural and grown from the earth, you're going to be healthier.
There seems to be this disconnect. You are what you eat, yet we see our neighborhoods still full of food that's not
right.
Healing.
Yeah, because I feel like it was in the Industrial Revolution, somewhere around the 1950s, when food started changing and it all became convenience food and easily packaged and prepared foods. And so now all of this stuff that's being created in labs and packaged to extend the life of things that once upon a time may have been natural. I mean, what we're eating is a bunch of chemicals and shelf life extenders. And so that can't really be nutritious.
And our taste buds have adapted.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like an addiction. Like if you were to eat McDonald's French fries every single day, or any French fries, excuse me, they're gonna get me, aren't they? If you're gonna eat anything that's like greasy and fried day after day, your taste buds become so used to it that when you taste something without all of those flavors, it would tend to be not as good for you, right? Because you're almost like addicted to these certain flavors. But there's also a learning that can come and a relationship that you build with the natural world. So like at Rustic Roots Sanctuary, we have a medicine wheel, and this medicine wheel is growing not only healing medicinal herbs, but a lot of culinary herbs as well. So then we'll have classes about how food is medicine, and we'll have people come out and do like a vinaigrette with like all these fresh herbs that we just picked from the garden and mixed in with oil and vinegar. And now you have like all of these flavors that are bursting in your mouth that don't just taste like salt. And I think that that's another way that you can transition people into, you know, realizing that some things have a better flavor than salt. And so if we can start making these little substitutions and switches, then we can really have better health outcomes.
How can we bring that experience to more neighborhoods, but then also bring it inside people's homes so it becomes part of our culture?
You know, I mean, that is the question, right? So, I mean, we can expose people to it, but bringing it into their homes, I'm not sure what the answer is. Like, I think, you know, sometimes when you have the children being exposed to it, they can come home and tell their families about it. You could get in that way. As far as just, you know, there are a lot of people that will hear all of these stories about like why it's so important to have nutrition, but then if they go outside of their door and can't find any nutrition anywhere, like how do they get it? So I think part of the problem is that we don't have enough access, but another problem is we don't have the education like on how to prepare things from scratch and those types of things. So I guess it would have to be like this full campaign where you're you know, infiltrating people's neighborhoods through probably media, because that's the number one entry point into people's homes, right? So you give them exposure that way. And then you also have people that are going out and helping people create their own garden in their backyard. We have a couple different initiatives in St. Louis that will actually go out and help people set up a garden in their own backyard. So I feel like that's one solution. And then just really like having a community garden or farm in every neighborhood. Like that's one of the things I think would be awesome. It's almost like back in the day when we had victory gardens. Like everybody was growing their own food because they had to, right? So I feel like we should start feeling again like we have to. It's a matter of life and death. You know, you can be a completely toxic, sick individual, or you can be someone who has health, relationship with plants, and are kinder to the environment as well. And so I just feel like, yeah, urban farming and gardening kind of checks a lot of boxes off in saving the world. We have set the space up to have little pockets of meditation and grounding areas like all around the farm. So aside from just feeding community, which last year we grew almost 19,000 pounds of food, aside from just the stories where we're feeding the community, we're also healing trauma in nature. So we have a lot of people that are coming in and being connected to Mother Earth and just feeling like something is healing inside of them. So to me, that's probably one of the most beautiful aspects of the work that we're doing, is that people come in and they just feel this sense of peace immediately. And as they're meandering, or they can come in grouchy, and at first they're grouchy, but as they walk the land, suddenly by the end of it, they're just light and fluffy feeling. And I love to watch that transformation too. So yeah, the stories are actual, like we have a senior program where last year we served 75 seniors. If they were homebound, we delivered it to their doorsteps. This is weekly bags of groceries, just fresh harvested from the farm. And if they're able-bodied, they could come to the farm and pick them up. And a lot of them like to come out there because it reminds them of their youth. So yes, there's stories of just like the senior community that now Miss Cookie's one of them, you know? They love to come out to the farmers markets and just chill on the farm, play cards in the tree grove. But they're also having these benefits, like their A1Cs are lowered, their oncologists are like, what are you doing? You know, after they've had their summer of fresh produce. So it's really having a positive effect on the community as a whole. I love to be in the dirt. It like it makes my heart open up. Like I love it. But to me, it was just like, oh, we have all this land and, you know, this is not a desert. Like we can put any seed in the ground in Spanish Lake and pretty much grow food. So to me, it was just one of those things where I really just had to start somewhere. But as far as the healing goes, yes, we've created a safe space for healing in nature, but we're also able to take Black and brown people and heal their relationship with the land as well. And so to me, I feel like I'm just helping people remember their connection to the natural world and the earth. And I feel like as long as we take care of Mother Earth, she will take care of us. So it's like my job, because it's on my heart, to communicate that like everywhere I go.
Are you seeing more interest in farming? Yeah? Mm-hmm,
absolutely. So, well, COVID, we got our 501c3 designation in 2020. And COVID exploded, yes. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, what can we do? Like everybody wanted to be outside, be in nature. And then there was the shortage of everything. So I think people really started waking up to like the food supply chain issues at that point in time. And more people came out to the farm and were like, we want to do this. We want to learn how to grow. Like, show us the way. We're just like, okay, come volunteer.
Yeah, and it's great. People want to learn how to grow food. It's unfortunate that we're going back to the roots when something so bad happens.
Yeah, it takes a catastrophe for people to wake up. Well, I think that's how so many things that are off balance in the universe are, you know. Instead of doing the things that we know are right and just doing them because they're right, it takes an actual catastrophe or the bottom to fall out or our whole lives to blow up to really recognize, oh, we need to make these changes. So honestly, like even when COVID was happening and all the rivers were cleaning up and like in Venice, Italy, like you could see through the waters again. And then it was like, as soon as they got it under control, it just goes straight back to the way, you know, things, business as usual, status quo, the way we always work. But all we can do is set an example, right? So I always say Rustic Roots Sanctuary is a microcosm of the world I wish we all lived in. And so like with my little lot of land, which is actually up to 8 acres now, I can set exactly the example that I want and invite people in constantly to just help other people see like how good it feels.
What it can be like.
What it can be like if we're committed. And yes, it's hard work, but it's totally worth it.
And I think our eyes have been opened to the importance of prevention.
Yes.
Instead of waiting
What's
to have
the
to
saying?
send the ambulance. Let's stop the problem from originating.
Right. So, I mean, unfortunately, right, that's with the babies. And so, like, I definitely grew up different. My mother is Korean, so she was a stay-home mom that made 3 meals from scratch a day. So, like, I was raised on that, and it was totally different. Like, we would eat kimchi and rice and fermented vegetables and all kinds of different things. But, yeah, I was raised in a household where we had food regularly, and it was fresh, and there was always someone cooking in the kitchen. So, but in this modern society, it's just so fast paced, you kind of have to trade your life force for dollars to exist, or at least that's the illusion that most people have bought into, that you need all of this extra stuff to exist and have a good life, when like half of the materialistic stuff we think we need could just be tossed away or let go of or recycled. Reused and recycled.
You're
Sorry.
like the whole thing.
That was like a whole little tangent, but yeah.
No, I appreciate you.
We have a lot of holistic classes, so it's the same vision. It's just like
Adapted to Spanish.
right, adapted to Missouri. No, it was almost like the universe just said, "This is where you're supposed to bring it. So get to work, girl." And then I also feel like the land has kind of guided me. Like I could. When I was walking around in the beginning, it was just dirt and scrub and all this, invasive species, and nothing was really there. I would take people on tours of the land and be like, and this is where the yoga yurt's gonna go, and they would be looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are you seeing? But I really feel like something was kind of pouring into me and telling me, like, this is where this goes. This is where you do this. And over here is going to be the medicine wheel where the community can come get medicine.
Yeah.
So.
And you made it happen.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I met Miss Cookie a couple of years ago, and she was so proud of the bags full of produce, and she was out gonna take them to the seniors.
Yes.
And she was talking to me about how important it is, because that's another part of our population that gets neglected.
That's exactly why we started there. I feel like, and when COVID happened and they were just at home unable to like get out and get food, I was like, we really have to do something to take care of them. So that was really our first program, was the senior program, and it went from like 6 to 8 seniors the first year to 75 last year. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Our podcast is Food for All.
Okay.
And if you could imagine with us what a St. Louis with access to healthy food for all people, what that looks like, what does Janett Lewis see?
I mean, I still see a small like farm or community garden on like every block. I feel like not only people growing their own food in their backyards, but having like a community resource where they can go and kind of share and connect is really, really good for the heart and soul. And so I believe if we could just get more farmers farming and more people growing in all of these spaces, we could totally overcome food insecurity. And then we could also be gentler on the planet too, because then now we don't have food having to be shipped as much from all these other places to get here. It's like that level of consumerism is not sustainable. So we really have to shift it. But the good news is we totally can. There's more than enough room, right? There's more than enough abandoned spaces that people just need to put some love into. And we can do it. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, good, good. We need you to be hopeful.
I'm hopeful. We just need like 100 more people, like every square. I don't know. We have to come up with the statistics for like how many square blocks do we need a grower on.